Okay, let's get started. Hello, thank you, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here today. We are here to talk about invoice management solutions, and today we're going to focus on essential VIM upgrades for 2021. My name is Brian Geezy, and I head up the marketing here at Optima, and I will be your host. The first thing I want to do is make sure you know what to expect today. We have a lot of information to cover in a 1 hour webinar, so we're going to keep this at a high level. But we've added some more detailed resources in the handout section. You'll see that over in your control panel, so be sure to take a look at those. Of course, we'll be sharing the webinar recording and the resources afterwards as well. Today, we're going to talk about what upgrades are available for vendor invoice management. And whether you're an OpenText or SAP centric environment, we expect you already understand the basics of VIM. You know that it reduces physical paper so you can get out of the file cabinets and into the digital world. Uh, it makes you more efficient. It minimizes the manual keying of data, and then it also delivers any document anytime. You have everything you need exactly when you need it. It's important to note that we're not just talking about AP documents here, but other business processes as well. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. It's also, we'll cover in our current COVID uncertainties, all of these are essential to keep you running and productive. It's a very strange time and it impacts everything you do these days. If you aren't sure if VIM would benefit you, put a message in the chat and we'll follow up with you afterwards. The next thing we're going to cover is what's included in all these upgrades, what features, what additional capabilities. After that, we'll detail the actual benefits and value you get, what makes upgrading worthwhile for you. We'll also touch on how your future S4 HANA strategy can come into play here. And of course, we'll share the important details of timelines and costs that you should expect. If you have questions, put them in the chat, and if we have time, we'll address them. If not, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Our speakers today are Jay Jones. Jay has a long history of guiding companies through technology transformations and understands the business value of your upgrade choices. We also have Henrik Hallery, one of Optima's talented solution architects. Henrik has over 12 years of experience with OpenText and SAP solutions and will cover today's technical details. Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about Optima?
Thanks, Brian. And thank you to everybody who joined the webinar. So we thought we'd start off by giving you a little of our background and explain why we're uniquely qualified to be presenting this webinar today. Optima ECM Consulting is an SAP Gold partner with more than 11 years of experience providing unique technology solutions. And those solutions are pretty much focused on content-related processes like procure to pay and order to cash. We really try to help our customers build strategies that reduce cost, extract hidden data and insights, and maximize efficiency system-wide. We typically achieve these goals because we have a special expertise in SAP solution extensions like Vendor Invoice Management. We're one of North America's largest VIM consultants with over 175 implementations under our belt. Our consultants have more than 100 years in combined experience, and many of them are from companies like OpenText, which includes our two founders. Our decades of expertise in the full scope of information and content management across complex business and industries gives us a unique perspective on how to ensure the components like them serve your business goals. So please check out our website, optimaecm.com. And as Brian said, the presentation will be provided afterwards. Let's talk a little bit about why you're here today. So the first question is why upgrade, right? Why should you do it? And how do you build a case internally to do that? And so there are a couple main reasons. The main one is, one of the main ones is maintaining compliance and support, and that should be a no-brainer, right? You invested a lot of money in your systems, and you need to keep them up to date so that you can get the most out of them. That's an important part of this process. Next is preparing for S4HANA. All SAP customers will migrate to S4HANA at some point. So you want to be ready, and you want to do it on your terms. So that's why it's important to keep upgraded. And Henrik will talk more about that transition in some of the slides in a few minutes. Next is building a roadmap. We found that upgrading will help you support your technology roadmap, and then many times it informs it and helps to guide the direction. Critically important. Then lastly is increasing ROI, utilizing these capabilities, eliminating the old inefficiencies, increasing automation. All those things help you to repurpose your workforce. And so what does that mean? It means getting your workforce to concentrate on more important things and higher ROI executed tasks. So we know it's important to show your organization how upgrade can increase ROI and to build that case internally. We also know that there are many components that need to be understood when you do an upgrade. And that's why we've developed a VIM health check assessment. Our VIM health check assessment process helps you uncover high areas of ROI that will help you address upgrades. So we'll talk some more about this assessment a little bit later in the presentation and how you can utilize that process. Let's talk a little bit about the types of upgrades quickly. There are two types of upgrades. There's a technical upgrade and a functional upgrade. And Henrik's going to tell us a little bit more about the details of those types of upgrades.
Thank you, Jay. So the first type is a technical upgrade. And a pure technical upgrade provides a lot of under the hood fixes and optimizations. Most changes may not really be visible to the end user, but they are essential in order to keep your system supported and compliant with SAP standards. And nowadays, it's common that this type of upgrade is part of your roadmap towards a larger S/4HANA migration or implementation. The other type is, of course, a functional upgrade. And this type of upgrade is more focused on delivering new capabilities and features that may have been incorporated into the new release. So some goals of a functional upgrade is typically to further digitize the process, increase the return of investment, as Jay mentioned earlier, but also to stay compliant with new rules and regulations out there. It's important to know that these two types of upgrades do not need to happen independently, of course. They typically go hand in hand. Getting to a better technical state through a technical upgrade, while at the same time addressing gaps in current processes or other inefficiencies more on the functional side, will, from a project perspective, save you some time and money, since there's economies of scale handling both at the same time. So addressing the elephant in the room here, SAP S/4HANA is of course on a lot of current SAP customers' roadmap at the moment. And there's still some debate out there on when the final support end date occurs for current ECC customers, but there is no doubt you will have to make this move sooner or later. We just want to make sure you're prepared for what's coming ahead. So first of all, understand how VIM fits into the overall S/4HANA implementation strategy. You typically hear of a green field, a brown field, or even a blue field type of approach. But with either approach, there are some items you should be aware of. For instance, do you have a clear strategy on how to handle open invoices at the time of go live? You don't want to necessarily delay any payments, and at the same time, you don't want to lose track of any open invoices. This is something that needs to be planned and detailed out, and of course, we're happy to help you on that. If you're upgrading to a new version of VIM with the system conversion approach, this is also known as a brownfield approach. Do not uninstall the older version of VIM without proper due diligence, because you might still have a lot of programs making calls to functionality that is now removed. Try not to simply migrate the old way of doing things if that means bringing in process or technical inefficiencies that you anyway will need to resolve at a later point. There could, of course, be budget and time constraints not allowing you to take advantage of new features right away, but make sure to create a plan for how to take advantage of these later.
Thanks, Henrik. We have a quick question here. I thought this is a good point for is VIM 7.5 ready for S4HANA?
That's a great question, Brian. 7.5 is not compatible with S4HANA, but I'm going to provide a better overview of the different VIM versions out there on the next slide.
Okay, thanks.
So these are the typical VIM versions we see with our clients. There are still some customers out there running VIM 7.0, where support ended back in 2017. And in these cases, you will need to upgrade to at least stay compliant. What version you will upgrade to will basically depend on your roadmap. 7.5 is the current latest version if you're planning to remain on ECC for a while, and 7.5 is currently ending support end of 2023. If you're planning to upgrade to SAP S4HANA a few more years down the road, it might make sense to do the upgrade now, at least to the latest ECC version, so that you can take advantage of some of the benefits that are being offered right now, especially when it comes to increased automation and the ROI that would give you. But it will also help to pave the way toward an SAP S4HANA upgrade, as that gets you one step closer. But if you're in the planning of starting your upgrade to S4HANA, then you will need to make the move to an S4HANA compliant version of VIM, and right now that is version 16.3. You may wonder why the release numbers are so different. 7.5 compared to 16.3 sounds like a giant leap, but there's good reasoning behind that. So the ECC version has always kept the traditional versioning numbers, but OpenText have been trying to harmonize their different software versions so that they all align. And the first attempt of doing that was during the release 16, that incorporated a lot of OpenText software under the same roadmap. The S4HANA version of VIM followed this new versioning convention, while the ECC one remained on the traditional version number. You may see that there are some versions that I haven't really mentioned that are meant to be released in Q4, and that they're basically following the same principles. VIM 7.6 is planned to be released Q4 this year, and VIM 20.4, which is going to be the comparison to VIM 16.3, which is tailored more towards the S4HANA system. But you can see it basically follows how SAP names their SAP versions with year and when it was being released during the year.
All right, thank you. That's a great overview. Tell us a little bit more about what you get in each one of these versions.
Yeah, so if we start with 7.5, there are significant changes that are being introduced, and some of them, of course, are tailored to give you a lot of automation. So there's a new framework that's being introduced, which is more under the hood, called logic modules, that will allow you to default and automate even more data. So it provides a lot of flexibility under the hood, but may not necessarily be very visible to the end user, but it provides a lot of value. So that will help your organization automate key concepts such as, for instance, PO invoice line item matching. That really drives automation. but it also helps to create a more efficient and better timed goods receipt management process. Because in today's world, where invoices increasingly become more digitized, the timing of goods receipts will become more important in an invoice management process. And invoices will therefore, in most cases, arrive before a goods receipt. And you do not want handling a lot of missing GR scenarios, create a lot of extra workload within your organization. So this new framework will basically allow you to wait until the goods reach its location before allowing the invoice to match against them before proceeding to posting. And that still counts as a touchless process. Earlier, we also saw customers struggling to have an efficient dispute process. And in the upgraded version, you can manage disputes without having to leave the workflow screens. That will save you a lot of time, but it will also bring more transparency to your AP team, as any disputes will be recorded as part of the invoice audit trail. So since in an AP function, workload may be shared among multiple team members, everyone can stay up to speed to what's going on with that specific invoice. VIM Analytics, our VIM master report, as we like to call it, that has been completely reworked in the new version in 7.5. It now allows you to see the entire end-to-end process by bringing in invoice payment information, where the old VIM Analytics sometimes fell short. If you ever felt that the old VIM Analytics took forever to run, then you will be pleased by seeing that it provides more data and it provides it faster. I mean, our report should be user-friendly, and some of the feedbacks we received from the old VIM Analytics was that it did not provide all the information you're looking for in one screen. Instead, it provided two separate views for any document and workflow-related data. And when searching for invoices, you want to be able to see what the latest status is, what data has been captured, if there's still an action to be taken, and who has the responsibility for that action. And that problem basically goes away in new VIM Analytics, as all data is available in one screen, which allows the users to spend more time analyzing the data than having to search for it. If you're a global organization, then you've probably seen that e-invoicing mandates become increasingly more common. Basically, local tax authorities want to have a better overview and control over business-to-business related transactions. And of course, you would expect that your invoice management solution is able to comply with these new regulations. So with an upgraded VIM solution, you will be able to stay compliant without having to spend a lot of time and money enhancing the current solution to meet these new requirements. One big thing that is being introduced in 7.5 is that we're introducing an additional add-on called the OpenText Business Center. So the purpose of the OpenText Business Center is, for instance, to replace your old IDH, your incoming document handler. You may refer to this as this 7AX8 transaction to manage invoices coming into the system. So that procedure is basically taken over by this new Business Center module. But the new Business Center add-on will provide you a lot of features. For instance, a better automation framework for how to receive invoices, whether it's email, it's XML, IDOC, or perhaps you have Ariba and there's an out-of-the-box Ariba integration that comes with this new solution. The bottom three items on this slide are also something that this Business Center add-on will provide you, and I think these are one of the most important ones. So we're going to take a closer look at each of these in a moment. So on the S/4HANA version, and if you're upgrading to S/4HANA, allowing you to install the 16.3 version, in addition to what I already mentioned on the 7.5 version, you get some additional benefits. So you can run Vim in classic versus simple mode, for instance, where classic mode basically offers kind of the same level of flexibility and a similar framework that was delivered in 7.5. And this may be a natural choice for organizations upgrading from ECC and older Vim versions that basically want to gradually adopt to new S/4HANA concepts and basically keep their current invoice process intact. But what the simple mode provides is a new invoice process more designed according to S/4HANA concepts and standards, which could mean simplification, digitization, more of a cloud-first approach, and it provides a new user interface from the start. It's end-to-end Fiori-based, and it runs, excuse me, with a minimum set of configuration based on what's considered best practice settings. And it specifically targets invoices that can be automated by their nature and how they are structured, where there may be a limited need for any manual processing. It can be a method getting you live with Vim quicker if the number of invoices you process is in the smaller range of the spectrum, or the invoices you process are very structured and not as complex. What the 16.3 version also provides is the support of SAP's new unified posting process. And this new unified posting process, the strategy around that is to post all invoices through one unified transaction. And that transaction is Miro. So if you're familiar with how non-PU invoices are posted on the ECC side, that would mean that even your non-PU invoices would be posted through a Miro transaction and not FP60 as they were on the ECC system. There's also an option to run OCR in the cloud. An upgrade introduces a new OCR, which I will talk through shortly in more detail, but that can also be hosted on a cloud platform as an alternative to an on-premise installation, much due to the fact that the new OCR will connect to SAP and Vim using a REST-based web service.
Henrik, that's great information. So now can you tell us what customers are really getting excited about, what features they really like to see and are excited about now?
Yeah, there's definitely some different parts we see out there that attracts a lot of interest and where we have a lot of discussions. So one area that attracts a lot of interest these days and something that can be taken advantage of as part of the upgrade is what was released as a license change back in March this year. Because as of March this year, the commercial license for Vim now includes the Business Center framework and all the Business Center solutions that was formerly known on the SAP price list as SAP Digital Content Processing by OpenText. So that basically means that instead of being an AP automation solution with more of an incoming invoice focus, Vim is now a more of a document automation solution. So in addition to invoices, you would then basically be able to process incoming orders as sales orders, remittance advices sent by customers, converting delivery notes to goods receipts, and other documents, as you can see in this list. Of course, this will accelerate your organization's capability to further digitize your processes, and it will definitely allow you to get even more ROI from your current VIM investment. Your system will basically be able to grow according to your business needs when you need it, without having to go through any licensing barriers or having additional software that your IT department needs to support.
So Henrik, you mentioned licensing there. What are the new licensing metrics?
I think I can answer that question. That's a great question. With this license change, you're now licensed by number of documents instead of number of invoices, in order to follow a more document agnostic approach. So Henrik, maybe you can tell us more about the different types of documents and how they're used.
Yeah, so I've mentioned some of the documents already, but if we talk about documents coming in, although e-invoicing is on the rise, and if we talk about invoices specifically, any invoices or any other documents that you still receive in a paper format, or perhaps as an email attachment, where the latter is still very common, the need for OCR still remains. And in the past, with previous versions of OCR, there were some limitations on how to take OCR to the next level. For instance, training was fairly cumbersome and typically a separate manual effort. Not all types of data could be trained, especially data relating to line items or partner determination, etc. So what has been introduced as part of the upgrade is the OCR solution called Intelligent Capture, or also the term or called as SAP Information Capture by OpenText in the SAP price list. And this OCR solution basically comes with a knowledge base similar to Business Capture Center that was the previous version, which is made up of thousands of different formats, document formats. But on top of that, it provides artificial intelligence through machine learning. So what that means to your organization is that it gets smarter by your users using it without the need to do separate training. So it remembers changes made by users for when the next invoice comes in from that vendor. Earlier, that invoice would have to have been marked for training, and typically an IT person would have to log into the OCR server, locate the document, and then train it, and perhaps even transport the training data. That cumbersome process is eliminated as it learns right away, and it learns fast. We don't really see manual validation of image data as a step, a long-term step needed when you're live on Intelligent Capture. And with the license change that I mentioned on the last slide, you can take Intelligent Capture to be your OCR component and expand it to the other use cases I mentioned, giving you a unified solution for processing any document that has OCR needs within your organization. I mean, think about expanding machine learning OCR capabilities to your order to cash processes by automating your incoming orders, or on the accounts receivable side, automating your incoming remittance advices. Or why not automatically create goods receipt out of incoming delivery notes? So those are probably the three main areas we've seen so far, but there are other use cases out there. But basically, you would have a full service OCR, and your IT department would not have to support a patch framework of different solutions. Having an efficient OCR is typically what we see as a low-hanging fruit if done well, and that will get you some immediate ROI. And we have provided some sample calculations so that you can see examples of that. So as you can see in this slide, that there are some numbers and some different scenarios we have listed, and you can see some of the numbers and why we see this as a low-hanging fruit. But we put together 2 sample scenarios, identifying what type of ROI you could be getting by going down the route of implementing this new OCR solution with us. The first scenario, of course, yielding the greatest benefits, because we're in this scenario, we're coming from a level of not having any OCR at all, where basically manual keying of data is sort of the norm, whereas the second scenario is probably more common, where customers already have an OCR solution in place, which gives the organization at least a degree of automation already, but where the level of automation still really doesn't yield the best-in-class recognition numbers that you would like to see. And as you can see, there are significant savings to be done here as well. Remember, the purpose of OCR is to capture all the information the document has to offer. But that means the more data it captures, the greater chance it will give the workflow component on the SAP side the chance to completely automate that transaction and getting you to a touchless state. So that means the actual savings are probably even higher.
So Henrik, are these like absolute guaranteed savings?
Good question, Brian. The answer is no. I mean, these numbers are based on SAP's proven value calculator, and they're simplified numbers to give you a general idea of the monetary value it brings. If you're looking to get more tailored ROI numbers based on your specific organization, we will require data that can be directly tied into your current invoice process.
Okay.
But we're happy to provide that as well.
Okay, great. That sounds great. You've mentioned Fiori a couple times. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I'm sure most of you on the call are pretty familiar with SAP Fiori. And let's be honest, the backend SAP GUI can be a bit overwhelming, and it's not known to be the most user-friendly user interface, which can be a barrier in getting work done. But SAP is bridging that gap by introducing more and more functionality in this Fiori layer. So Fiori introduces a more modern and user-friendly interface, and upgrading your VIM solution will allow your VIM system to be on that journey, because it has its own Fiori tiles that comes available out of the box. Fiori, especially on the VIM side, typically targets occasional users that may not have as their main job to process invoices. It could be like an approver, for instance, that's mainly approving invoices, and typically don't necessarily work in the backend system too much either. So for the occasional users, it provides an easy-to-use interface, allowing you to approve or code invoices, but it also allows you to resolve things like quantity or price discrepancies, etc., all out of the box. And this would allow your occasional users to switch to a Fiori-based user interface instead of having to work in the backend, which can appear a bit more cumbersome, and that switch can potentially save you on license costs, since the licensing is a little bit different on the Fiori side. Given it's a more friendly user interface, it will allow your system to help you run your business instead of being an obstacle for you to overcome.
Well, that sounds great. Can you tell us a little bit more of how to make this happen?
Yeah, so I would say in order to embark on what's considered a successful upgrade journey, I think it's important to consider some high impact areas. So that could mean, for instance, taking into account what version are you upgrading from, because that may decide your technical approach, and you definitely want to avoid any pitfalls in that area. If you're live in multiple jurisdictions and have a larger footprint, then you may have a larger user base to take into account and potentially new regulations to consider. And with a large user base, change management will become extra important. Can you, for instance, tell your team's readiness for change? I mean, are people hanging on to the old way of doing things, or are they ready to improve? We do have a proven change management strategy that may help you alleviate some of those concerns. As in my opinion, change management is as important as setting up a good technical foundation. An important other factor is to determine what are your goals. Do you have both short-term and long-term goals? Some goals we typically see high on the list is, for instance, increased digitization, increased automation. But your project may also be part of a more longer-term goal around supply chain financing, for instance. And finally, is it part of an SAP S/4HANA upgrade? If that's the case, you will probably have to align to that upgrade schedule and priorities that are listed in the main upgrade project, as VIM is kind of the smaller piece of the puzzle from an overall S/4HANA upgrade standpoint. I want to share some last points in order for your upgrade to be successful. So first, focus on high volume vendors. The higher the volumes, the greater the potential for ROI. Secondly, focus on high impact areas. What does that mean? So in an AP invoice processing world, that means PO line item matching, management of goods receipts and timing of these, and also how to best manage additional costs, or how to best manage price and quantity discrepancies, and realize the impact on aspects such as moving average price, for instance, if that's something you track. It's always important to prioritize, because you don't really want to bite off more than you can chew. So build a plan on what to tackle first. Make sure to spend time on and plan for change management, because getting the users on board is essential for project success. Remember, change management can be internal, but it can also mean externally reaching out to your vendors. Are you setting up a new invoice ingestion? Are you introducing an email channel? Are you introducing EDI or something else? Let the vendors know what you're expecting. You don't want to have to do the work for your vendors. Try and keep your implementation process agile by allowing for feedback throughout the build phase. That's something we typically do, and we see that it really helps creating user acceptance. because it keeps everyone in line with the expectations. And finally, create a good test plan, because a good test plan is half the battle won. Make sure to test with real invoices and master data as early as possible. And again, focus on the high volume cases, not just the exceptions. It's tempting to test the exceptions, but try and follow like the 80-20 rule or something. Focus on the high volume cases, because those are going to have the highest impact on the automation and your ROI. So Jay, what can they expect in terms of cost and timeline, and can it be done remotely, since traveling right now may be an issue?
Yeah, thanks, Hendrik. Yes, let's for that question, can it be done remotely? I'm sure that's what's on everybody's mind. These are challenging times, and of course, we would like to spend more time with our customers face to face. That's an ideal situation, but it may be a while before we can do that. And so we are currently doing and have done in the past many remote upgrades and implementations. And customer experience is extremely important to us. So we have put together our own proprietary interactive design methodology, which helps customers to stay engaged and understand where we are in every step of the process and really be a part of it. So yes, that's very much a part of what we do is the remote upgrade. Most people immediately want to know what the cost is. And of course, there are different factors, and it depends on your unique business processes. But a general rule of thumb is that it's between $100K and $300,000 for an upgrade. If you only need intelligent capture, it's between $50,000 and $85,000. And as Hendrik said before, we have ROI calculators that can help you understand your gain from an upgrade, or even your potential cost and loss for not upgrading, which I think is extremely important. When you think about a timeline and adding that experience into it, again, there are many factors that affect a timeline. But in general, it's 3 to 6 months, and that means that you need to be prepared and ready for that timeline. So in the next slide, we'll actually go through a timeline and show you what that looks like. Okay, let's go through the timeline. So it starts with the launch and design phase, which is about 2 to 6 weeks typically. And in that phase, we do project planning sessions and then blueprint design, at least one or more blueprint design sessions. And then we collect all the business and technical requirements over that 2 to 6 weeks. And again, a lot of that's done with our interactive process. Okay. The next phase is the build phase, which is typically 4 to 8 weeks. And that's when the installation of the upgrade package occurs. There's some baseline configuration. We then initiate some accelerators, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second here. There's the UT user testing that goes on, and then test script development in this phase. Okay, after that is the iteration, build, and test and train phase, which is about 4 to 6 weeks. And it's the hallmark of that is really working closely with you to refine and to get your inputs, and then to put together a go live plan. And then of course, finally is the deployment plan, which usually only takes 1 to 2 weeks. Let's take a next look at how this plan is put in action with a success story. So we completed a technical and functional upgrade to VIM 7.5 Service Pack 11 for a very large plumbing supply manufacturer on the East Coast. The project included implementing Business Center, Intelligent Capture, archiving and document access, validation client, and single-click entry. The key enhancements that were required were automatic invoice ingestion by email, streamlining the document process workflow, and enabling auto coding features. The parameters around the project were a $100,000 budget and a 60-day timeline, and we came in under budget and within the timeline. And one of the ways that we were able to do this is after 175 implementations, we really come up with some great tools, strategies, and processes, which we call accelerators. Optima accelerators are upgrade and implementation strategies. They're actually some code and some connectors all put together to speed up the process and to make it more efficient. And I think Henrik's going to go through some of those accelerators in the next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, I mean, after over 11 years of VIM implementation across hundreds of clients, you learn a few things. And all that knowledge and experience has resulted in what we call our Optima accelerators. The purpose around these accelerators is basically to solve common challenges we see with almost every client. And given the fact that these have been launched with a lot of our clients, each one has been tested very thoroughly. They have been refined over the years, and they are very proven. So that there's good quality of these accelerators. Achieving automation is a journey, but that does not really mean you have to wait for it to happen. So the purpose of our accelerators is to accelerate the time it takes for your organization to get to a best-in-class state. After all, we are the experts in this space. And that could mean enhancing automation features. And I've listed some of the really high impact ones on this slide. And I've mentioned some of them in the past as well. So enhanced line item matching, one of the key concepts in order to get to a touchless state for your PU invoice processes. Taxation, especially in a global environment, where that can be a cumbersome process to automatically determine tax codes and manage tax variances. Think of a European implementation and their VAT requirements that plays in nicely there. Additional cost handling is something that's also that can be very cumbersome to customers. So we have an accelerator that helps you automate how to manage additional costs, whether these are planned or unplanned. Also, on the non-PO side, not having to do a lot of maintenance when it comes to managing approvers, because that can be a cumbersome and time-consuming task. Because in VIM there's something called the chart of authority that allows you to map and set up your approver structure, and we provide an integration to for instance your SAP HR Mini Master, where that data may already be maintained, so that you don't have to do another round of maintenance on the VIM layer. So that will also save you some time and remain compliant to your organization's policies. As part of this webinar, you will have access to a list of the most common ones we implement. So it's listed in the handout section. So please make sure to download that, and we'll be happy to talk through the ones that may be of interest for you as a follow-up to this webinar. Okay, over to you, Brian, to talk through the next step and to close this webinar.
Okay, thanks a lot. It looks like we're getting to the end of our hour here. We have a couple quick questions that I want to throw out, and I think, Henrik, this one's probably for you. So OpenText World is this week. Do you have any information on what's in the new versions that have come out? You mentioned those in the release timeline earlier. What new features or functionality is available, or do we know yet?
So as I mentioned, the new versions, the ECC and S/4HANA version is planned to come out in Q4. So we don't have a specific release date yet. And OpenText provides a roadmap. Not everything is 100% confirmed, but there's some improvements that's happening on the Fiori side. So they're looking to do more functional and design improvements, especially around the approval Fiori applications. Also a little bit more on the reporting side in the Fiori layer, both for invoices and business center side of the house. On the more automation side in the backend system, I know that there's plans to incorporate smart coding of non-PU invoices that can incorporate machine learning, for instance. And I also know that there's plans around enhancing the business partner determination, which can, in some cases, be a cumbersome process. But it remains to be seen once it's officially released. But these are some of the items that I know have been planned, at least that's on the roadmap.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Well, we are wrapping up right here to the end, so I think we'll close it out here. If we didn't get into to answer your specific question, we will follow up with you afterwards, so you can still add them in if you would like. But I want to thank you, Henrik, and thank you, Jay, for your information and insights today. We really did touch on a lot of stuff in a short amount of time here. Just a quick recap: we talked about existing VIM versions and upgrades. Their new their new features and capabilities they offer, not only for AP documents, but for other business processes as well. We also showed some of the actual benefits and value you get and what makes upgrading worthwhile just from that monetary sense, and what's it worth going through this trouble to do it. We only briefly touched on planning your future S/4HANA strategy, so make sure you grab that handout. It goes into a little more detail on the different approaches. And then finally, we talked about timelines, costs, giving an example of a successful project. So what do you do with all that information? What do you do now? Well, like I said, first, be sure to download the handouts from your webinar control panel if you haven't already. We put these together so you can share them with your team. Feel free to share them around, take a look at them, talk them over together. Get with your team and start evaluating the current state of your environment. What do you want to achieve in the coming years? Think aspirational, not just fixing problems, but what do you want this to be able to do? What do you want to be able to achieve? And then finally, if you have any questions, please contact us. We can help you examine your environment, establish goals, budgets, timelines, everything you need for the coming year. We can help you. If you need some help, more specifically, we do have, what Jay mentioned earlier, a service called a VIM health check, specifically designed to help you evaluate your environment and then provide technical and functional recommendations. This is a really, really powerful program that we have. It helps you get in and understand exactly what you need to do to move forward. We're going to follow up with a call to tell you more about that service. We'll also be sending the recording and resource links to you as soon as everything gets processed from recording the webinar. So watch for those emails. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Thank you again to Jay and Henrik for the information. Hopefully you got something valuable out of this, and we hope to talk to you all again soon. Look for our emails and with the information you need from this. And as always, contact us. If you have any questions, send us an email, info@optimaecm.com. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.